Be informed and stay up to date with what your elected representatives are doing on your behalf with the State House Report.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Dr. Ivory Thigpen. I am the State Representative for House District 79. This is my 8th year of service to that district as well as the state of South Carolina. I am currently the 26th chair of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus. This is our 50th year of existence. And on our anniversary, we've celebrated really some great milestones this year. We, for the first time, had our annual treat this past December at the International African American Museum, affectionately known as IAM. If you have not had the opportunity to visit it, I think it is a great place to learn more about the heritage and the history of persons of African descent who reside not only in South Carolina but ultimately spread throughout the United States. We are ground zero for many of the persons who entered in this country under the bondage of slavery. But regardless of your nationality or ethnicity, it is breathtaking and sobering to sit amongst the artifacts and the history and the answers of our ancestors. And particularly when we talk about the work of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, which is to promote minority businesses and create opportunities for minorities, not only communities but persons. It was only fitting that the 50th anniversary be celebrated there. This legislative year has already started off really, really challenging. We look at a state where, for the first time, we potentially could have super minorities in both the House and Senate chambers. What that means is that we have less than 1/3 of the numbers. So in the House we have 124 members. In the Senate we have 46 for a total of 170. So in the Senate we are at 15 Democratic senators to the 46. In the House we have 35 to the 120 of the 124. That becomes important because you need 2/3 in order to override any veto from the governor. And in a ruby red state like South Carolina, there are many things that the governor threatens to veto. But sadly, we can't even stop vetoes at this point because we don't have enough votes. And so let me just pause again and talk about the importance of voting. I know many times people think that, it's not a major issue, nothing really changes when I vote, we just get the same people with just, a merry-go-round of seats. But it's more than playing musical chairs. There are impacts to voting. Numbers matter. Voting matters. You matter. And so when we think about, again, just quickly, the history of people of African descent in this country and how we've many times been reduced to not even second-class citizenry. At some point, we weren't even considered fully human as we counted for 3/5 of a person. We owe it to all those who bled and who sacrificed and who sweat and gave tears to the cause that allowed us to have the right to exercise the ability to vote. And so I just want to encourage you to vote because indeed it does matter. A lot of times it's less of an issue of who's registered, but the percentage of who gets out and vote. So again, back to our legislative update, because we've lost so many seats, we've seen that there are bills now that have become much more extreme and really do threaten what is our current way of life, particularly as African Americans. And we see a lot of socially divisive issues that are being pushed, some would say rammed down our throats. We see one of the things that we've talked about and we will continue to talk about as the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus is opportunity and access. When we talk about representation, from a demographic standpoint, African Americans and minorities make up about 30% of the South Carolina's population. Women make up more than 50% of South Carolina's population. Yet when we look across our judicial bench, enrollment in our universities, enrollment in our graduate schools, particularly law and medicine, and even to the bar and even to governmental agencies, we see that it's not reflective of the demographics. Case in point, there's 158 judge seats that are voted on by the General Assembly. Of that, 31% are female when they make up more than a majority of the state. Only 13% are African American when African Americans and minorities make up 30% of the state. This has to change. We have to be intentional about it. One of the things that we know, budget week is next week. We've already seen efforts for the removal of the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion, programs that relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've even seen even the funding in universities and governmental agencies that relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion come under attack. And to be quite frankly, it is the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, as well as others, but principally us, who are standing up in that fight, because diversity is so important to our state, to our universities, to our colleges, to our government agencies. We cannot allow individuals to turn back the hands of time because they want a very monolithic and even just not in thought, but even in representation of persons and ethnicities, to be, as some have termed, make America great again. And so we have to continue that fight, because diversity is just simply saying that we value different opinions, different perspectives, different concerns. We have complex issues in the state, and we need complex input to solve these problems. And I sit up intentionally because the reality is that diversity is so needed. Equity, not that everybody gets equal, but it's a needs-based assessment, that we understand people's circumstances and situations, we're sensitive to it, and we provide solutions of the such. Inclusion, no one should feel left out. We have to legislate, govern in such a way that it allows for all of South Carolinians, from the richest to the poorest, to be included and have opportunities and access to resources, because it makes our state as a whole better. It's a stronger South Carolina. It's a more diverse South Carolina. It's a more equitable South Carolina. It's a South Carolina that has economic power, because companies, corporations desire to come to places because they already know the value of diversity, not only in the workplace, but more importantly, in the consumers of their product. They're not, and nor do they want to, provide their products to a niche or a small group of people. They want as many people as possible to make utilization of whatever their product is, because that's how they make a profit. And to understand that is to understand that you have to know the values, the concerns, the issues, the context of all the people in which you seek to provide products to. So, we will not take the bait of believing that diversity, equity, inclusion is language that discriminates, because it doesn't discriminate. As a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. It ensures that there is no discrimination, right? But I won't beat that drum anymore. We'll move forward to talk about as a caucus, there are certain things, even just from a historical standpoint, that we want to lift up. We want to lift up the Gullah Geechee language. One of the things that I hope that we're able to get done in this session is allowing it to be recognized as an official language. We've had some conversations. We've had a bill sponsored by Representative Jermaine Johnson, and he has the entire backing of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus. We're very interested in our pipeline from our HBCUs to a lot of these corporations that have, put their footprints in South Carolina. For it's not just enough to come here. Again, there needs to be a representation in employment, and that's not just in the jobs in the lower rung, that's in the upper management as well, that it should be represented of the demographic. We cannot be left behind. Representative Congressman Ro Khanna talks about the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, how African Americans truly were excluded from it. Not only from the boom of the revolution itself, but also from the governmental aids that were provided, the resources that were supplied, that really were the foundation, the undergirding of these revolutions, right? But there's a technological revolution happening right now, and we have to make sure that even though we were excluded from the first two, that we're definitely a part of that. So how do we disperse? How do we spread that wealth? How do we allow individuals to have access and opportunity? Because we will ultimately reduce to permanent second-class citizenry, if not less than that, if we're not a part of this revolution that's taking place right now. That's why it's so important to form those type of pipelines and relationships and internships and interviews and training at our HBCUs, so that our graduates will be able to walk into jobs. And not just HBCUs, even into the technical colleges, because really there are a lot of jobs now with the technology that we see, that really it just requires a technical associate's degree, and you can walk into well-paying $70,000, $85,000 jobs and be barely in your 20s. I know what my hope is for my children, and I imagine it is the same for individuals' children, that this is a type of ladders that we want to be provided for them, so that not only they can climb it, but they can even let down ladders for others as they serve as an example. So I could go on. One of the other things that is an initiative that we're looking to is the SCIII, Information Innovation. It's one more institutes. Yeah. And what it is each of the 7 historically black colleges and universities have provided money from the HEAP program, that is money that comes from the South Carolina Educational Lottery. And as much as I appreciate the South Carolina Educational Lottery, it's not necessarily needs-based. It's one that really is available for all, but there are some who specifically have needs. There's disparities, and really that's what we also have to be concerned and mindful of. We know that a lot of times our HBCUs have served the disadvantaged or economically disadvantaged groups, and so what we want to make sure of is that from that money there's specific line items that are granted to them, so that they can provide programs that train our students at HBCUs. As well as one of the things that I think has come onto our radar too is just the facilities and infrastructure at our HBCUs. They've been woefully underfunded, both on the land grant side as well as on the academic and infrastructure side. And again, when it comes to talking about these issues, if we don't lift it up, if we don't bring awareness, if we don't address it, I don't know who else will. And we've seen, if history repeats itself or it remains true, that it's our responsibility to toe that line. Again, I can continue to talk on all of the many things that each of the members of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus is doing. We form great partnerships. We just celebrated HBCU Day, where we bring in all of the HBCUs and their various institutes and their students and those who are alumni and supportive of it. And even though it's in its infancy, this is our second or third year. I think it's the second year celebrating. It was initiated 3 years ago. We want to make sure that when this month comes, where we celebrated the third Tuesday in every February, that we don't just come up here with pomp and circumstances, but we have at least 2 budget requests that we want to ensure gets passed and a part of the appropriations and budget. We want to make sure that we have at least 2 bills, right? That if we really want to honor the black history and the history of individuals who have sacrificed and served and given their all to this state for black inclusion, then celebrate it by putting some requests and granting them in the budget. Celebrate it not in word but in deed, and passing legislation that sometimes otherwise wouldn't see light. So as we prepare to pass the baton to Representative Annie McDaniel, we want to make sure that there's no loss in momentum, but instead that more wind is gained in our sails. Sales, S-A-I-L, not S-E-L-L-S. And lastly, let me just speak. Again, I say that I'm Dr. Ivory Thigpen, State Representative, House District 79. I have chosen not to seek recollection for House District 79. Instead, I've offered myself as a candidate for Senate District 22. There is a major portion of House District 79 that is included in Senate District 2, so I'm no stranger to the Senate District. But after much prayer and much thought, and after really hearing the call from God and the charge from God to offer myself, I've done just that. I've tried to stand up a campaign and pull together people of like-mindedness so that we continue the work that needs to be done in the district. I know that with any election, there are many sometimes who offer themselves and contend. But as I have often stated, one, we're not running against one another, because my thought is not for the candidates that would put themselves in the race. My thought is for the constituents in which we would serve and the work that needs to be done. And that's what we offer ourselves to. At least that's what I offer myself to. And then I believe that, as people offer themselves, it only makes the candidates better. Or the harder you have to work to get into the position, the more the likelihood is that you will work hard once you're in the position. My statement as it relates is liberty and justice for all. I know that we've had a lot of losses, as Democrats, as I run under the Democratic Party. We lost the Roe v. Wade decision in the federal courts. We lost a 6-week ban decision here in the state of South Carolina. We've lost House seats 8. We've lost Senate seats 4. And there's a possibility in the upcoming election that we may potentially lose even more. And that's why I think it's so important to have strong candidates, strong Democratic candidates, to offer themselves so that we can, really as best we can, stop this surge of losses and begin to have some fundamental wins in protecting our democracy. We don't have to look back far. In January 6th, insurrection is not the only example of our country and our democracy being under attack. It's happening at the state level as well as the federal level. And so that's why I believe you have to have leaders who hear the clarion call. And I believe at this time of extremism and divisiveness, you need a calming voice, you need a steady hand, you need someone who's willing to be courageous, have spinal fortitude as I sit up, and not afraid to get into the fray of the fight, but to end the fight, so that we can progress collectively as people. I have a hope, I have a belief in a greater South Carolina, where no matter who you are, where you're from, what your party is, you are treated as though you are valuable to the state and that you bring value to the state. And I believe we can get there, and we can get there soon. That's why I want to offer myself. So again, I'll close out a little bit different than I began. I am Dr. Ivory Thigpen. I am a candidate for Senate District 22. It includes the upper portion of Blythewood, Richland County, Northeast Columbia, and down into Acadia Lakes and Forest Acres in the city proper limits. So, look forward to hear from us again. Thank you again.